Welcome to day 2. Today we're going to talk about the 4 forces of riding. So this is just looking at how we can stay best aligned when we're riding so that when we get movements from the horse, to simplify it, we kind of get movements that we get thrown forward, we get thrown back, or we get thrown side to side. So we're going to look at how we can find a riding posture and alignment so that we can stay most solid and secure and most stable through all these different movements. So I'm going to show you some things that you can use. You can have a friend do this, you can have your riding instructor do this, and it's going to really give you some little tests to make sure that you're in the best position possible to be nice and stable when you ride. I'm here with Henry and Julia, and they're going to help me with this demo on how we can stay most stable for riding. So when we're talking about a stable position, one of the most important parts of our body to pay attention to for this is first the back and the chest. So we're going to make some adjustments so that you can just see what I'm talking about here with Julia and how that affects her stability and also how it affects Henry just standing here. And then we're going to kind of move up and down the body and find out little places where if we get tight or if we brace or if we have something that's not quite right, how we can actually hinder our stability. So starting with the back, there's 2 things that riders often do. The first is hollowing. So go ahead and show us a hollow back. So you saw that when she hollowed her back, the top of her pelvis came forward and this got hollow. And if I stand up on the block here, I'm going to push on her back and I'm going to push on her sternum. And this is just kind of simulating different forces that we might get forward and back from the horse moving. So I'm going to push here, and you can feel I can move you forward really easily. Now I'm going to push on your sternum. The same thing, I was able to just pivot her right back from her seat bones and throw her back. Now there's another thing that riders often do, especially in these Western saddles with the deep seats, and that is pushing forward with the legs to try to brace with the heel and then kind of tucking into the back of the saddle. So when you sit there, it probably feels like a pretty solid position. But now let's check if I push. I can pivot her right over her leg. And now I'm going to push back on your sternum. And the same thing, I can push her back there pretty easily too. And it might look as we're doing this that we're just kind of making it up and that Julia knows what to expect. And even though we've done this demo before, it really does make a huge difference.
Even just the slightest amount of pressure, you can feel it change your position.
Yeah, yep. And the slightest little, like, how you move your body. So now we're going to help Julia find a more stable position. So if you fill out your lower back, and to do this, you can think drop the top of the pelvis back. You can think like I have my hand here kind of on the small of her back, and she's thinking to kind of breathe towards this space where my hand's at. All those little visuals can help with filling out the back. You'll see that her leg also went soft, so she's no longer bracing in her heel. And now from here, keep your back full and just think about softly float forward with your sternum. Okay, now I'm going to push on your back. And now I'm pushing a lot harder than I was before. But notice how Henry, if you watch his shoulder, he's actually having to stabilize because now instead of me just pushing Julia, the force is actually coming through to Henry. So we're actually influencing the horse now with your body. So now I'm going to push on your sternum. And the same thing, I'm pushing a lot harder than I was, and she's much more solid. So another way that you can test this is I'm going to come forward and I'm going to give a little pull on your reins. So we're going to go through quickly. First go to hollow back. Okay, and I'm going to pull and you come right forward. And this you can see is a really easy, it's an easy test, but it's also something that frequently happens if you have a horse that pulls or if you're trying to use more rein pressure in order to slow your horse down or stop. Okay, now go into leaning back. Yep, and you can brace yourself there as hard as you can. So here she's more solid than a hollow back, but I'm still able to pivot her forward over her braced feet. Okay, now find that nice and solid. Okay, so she's got full back. One of the other little things to point out here is that the abdominals don't have to be tight. Nice. So now again, I can pull and the force comes through to Henry. So filling out the back, letting the top of the pelvis fall back and expanding the chest doesn't mean getting really tight here to try to brace yourself. It's actually the opposite. It's finding the alignment and then staying soft so that the force can go through. So that was showing kind of that front and back, but we said 4 forces, so now we're going to look at side to side. So I'm going to stand up here again, and I'm going to push right here and just basically try to push Julia off the other side. So we're going to push from here. Good. And now it won't be quite as much pressure on the other side since I'm pulling. Good. So she's quite stable side to side, but I want you to notice what happens if you try to make your stomach tight. Yep. And I'm going to pull you towards me, make the core tight. So now I could literally slide her right off. Now let the core go, think fill out your back. So now when I push, it's her deeper postural muscles that engage and they keep her solid. When she tries to get tight and hold herself on and brace, it actually does the opposite, and it makes it easier for me to push her around. And if I can push her around, if she was in movement with Henry and got this tight posture, then you'd be much more likely to get thrown during a spook or during a trip or any of the little things that the horses do. So I encourage you to do some of these tests for yourself on your own horse. And again, as you can see, you don't need someone that is necessarily skilled in riding or is a riding instructor. You can even have a friend. Just ask, can you pull on my reins? Can you push here on me? And see what you feel. Make those little adjustments until you can feel nice and stable.